an event in coordination with the Shinji Ohmaki exhibition, Interface of Being. Shinji Ohmaki and the poet Ryoko Sekiguchi will be having a crosstalk, which is going to be a dialogue between them.
Thank you very much. Maybe I should start by asking you some questions. So, well, I'm very happy that you decided to involve me in this event. And in the catalogue of this exhibition, I was originally asked to write something for the catalogue, but my involvement has been extended. And then when I arrived here, my words shown on display. And also, why not come to Japan? So it was so exciting, this whole experience for me. And at the same time, I felt that, this is a collaboration. Collaboration. It's easy to say, but it takes some courage to do that. First time for me to see you, to be together. And for preparation of this exhibition, I had a chance to talk with you by Zoom video conference. And then I decided I like this person very much. And without knowing me, he has decided to let me participate in this exhibition, which is very important. And he was so generous to make available the space in this exhibition, make this space available for me, a total stranger. And Ryu Suzuki, the dancer, you had a collaboration with this dancer, Ryu Suzuki. Why? I mean, maybe this is not the first time for you to do that. Why do you do that?
Thank you for coming here. Well, there's so many things going through my mind right now that it's very difficult to make sense of it. But as you've already heard, I've been working on 3 exhibitions. This is the last exhibition for this year. And I've collaborated with dance performances by providing sets. And since I was asked to do this in January, until April ended, I had absolutely no idea what to do for this, because I had to concentrate on the Hirosaki exhibition. There was also the entrance exams for the university where I teach. And there was so much going on. And I also had to continue my work, which had gone on for 1 year, to create the dance performance Rain. So I simply could not think about this exhibition. But while I was working on Rain, you have the people who think about the dance, about the stage, about the music, and scenography for the theater is a total artwork. And I'd previously thought about everybody concentrating on their bit. But when I was asked to work on this RAIN project, I was informed that my title was going to be scenographer or set designer, but think of it as a collective, which is something that I hadn't really thought about. That collectives are about a community of people who come together, people who also bounce off ideas against each other. That bunch of people need to come together. They also melt together, they become one. And it also means that my thoughts about what should happen to sculpture and how dance should be, all of those preconceived ideas needed to be worked upon through discussion, through interaction, through dance, and through actions. And through that process, we all worked on creating this single work. And that was my experience for a year, which was very important for me. In the past, when I worked on installations, if I made any allowances for anything, those allowances would be directly impacting myself. So I felt that I couldn't let down my guard. I had to be aware of everything, and I had to be constantly working on everything. However, working on this dance project, I was able to talk with Suzuki-san. I read Rain, the novel. I thought about what it meant for us today, about the COVID pandemic, about the earthquake, about being cast adrift at sea, and what we would think about if we arrived in desert island. And thinking about dance, I asked my collaborator if they had any idea about the dance itself, and his response was nah. And then I was asked if I had any idea after reading Rain. And I said, well, Suzuki-san, try to express that novel that you've just read using your body. And Suzuki-san is a dancer, so he used his body, his physical body, to respond to me. As an artist, I decided to respond using drawings. So that shimmering, that effervescence that he felt, that he expressed, is what I tried to depict in my drawings. But it wasn't formalized or finalized yet as dance or as a performance piece. But by interacting and by exchanging, we had this really fantastic time. It was really intriguing for me. And everything gradually became evident. We shared sketches. You can see part of my sketches in the exhibition. And you can see the sketches for Rain at the very end. And there are so many other things that I hoped to have shown to you. But though I did offer to tear out some pages, they said I shouldn't spoil the entire effect, so I wasn't able to do that. But in this process, what was fantastic was deciding not to decide. Thinking about how long we could delay the final decision was really an endurance test for both sides. And that meant that we were actually cultivating and fermenting the entire process of being alive and interacting. And whenever he felt that we needed to talk, we would use Zoom to contact each other. And I would just respond using words and sketches. And I could just send him a text photograph, mail, for everything. So I think we had that connection, and another thing which was really difficult, in fact, was that spelling everything out in words was really difficult and really hard on me. And that's why I sort of delayed responding to Nagaya-san, who wanted to talk about the catalogue, because I kept on using the China exhibition as an excuse. I had the idea ready by June, but something was lacking. It wasn't the explanation. When I was trying to think of what was necessary, I always think of the story, the narrative. It's like reading a novel. I think about how people can experience the beginning, the development, and then the different offshoots that might happen. That narrative in the exhibition is something that is really strong for me, but I couldn't really see it. I couldn't really visualize it. And I kept on responding by saying nothing comes to mind whenever I was asked about suggestions for people to write tech articles or essays. I tested positive for COVID, so I wasn't able to go to see Nagaya-san after coming back from China during the summer. So we decided to talk about the catalogue from September. And I was given names for people who would be possible authors who could write for the catalogue. But Nagaya-san said it might be interesting to get somebody from the performing arts to write for the catalogue, which I thought would be interesting. And I was sounding people out. But there was less than 1 month's time until the deadline that we needed to keep for the catalogue. But then I thought it's possible that we might end up having things which are very similar to each other. The installation, the garden, or the set, or anything. And Ryosuke Kondo, Claria Cherenik have written for the catalogue, which have given me possibilities about ending up with similarities for everything, or wondering whether there was the right way to do things. And if I write for a catalogue, I tend to explain everything. So we decided to have a meeting, and then it just happened that the other curator who was working on this project, Miyajima-san, said, "What about a poem?" Then I thought, poems? Poems for an exhibition? And they just tooled out the Boltanski catalogue. And when I was looking at it, Christian Boltanski's work really make themselves felt the moment you step inside his exhibitions. But you can't express what you're feeling because this is so immense. When I was trying to think of how to come to grips with it, when I saw the poem, it actually seemed to afford a possible release. And then I thought, if I write something as a text, I always feel that I have to follow the narrative, the trace of narrative. But perhaps poems will allow simple dots of light to be scattered throughout. So I said, perhaps a poem would be a good idea, but which poet? Because I've hardly ever met poets. The only poet I've ever met is Akira Tatehata. And I mean, Tatehata-san is almost like the creator of a song. But I was given Sekiguchi-san's poetry, and I thought perhaps we should meet. And then I was told that she lives in France, and so we had a remote meeting via Zoom. And yesterday I met you for the second time. And when we met over Zoom, I thought that Sekiguchi-san, I'm meeting you for the first time, but it didn't feel like the first time. That's what I thought. I felt I know this person. So I simply flooded her with words, everything in my mind. And Sekiguchi-san listened to me, and she was smiling. And when we have a Zoom conference, you usually don't meet each other's eyes, which connects with Namjoon Paik, I think. There's this absolute impossibility of communication. The communication is always one-sided. However, that communication connected. We connected. It clicked, which is really weird. Because during COVID, I had all these Zoom meetings, but it was always a one-way street. You can only give or you can only receive. And I thought it was impossible that she was going to understand what was going on in my mind. But I felt that we could communicate. What was it like for you, Sekiguchi-san? Absolutely. I thought we could make a go of it. And I thought Ohmaki-san is going to be okay with me writing for this. And you know, what is difficult is that at the Hirosaki exhibition, I wasn't able to go to see it because I was in France. And it would have been ideal if I could have gone to see it. But you see, with an installation, you need to be there. There's so much that you can only experience. It's as difficult as writing about a restaurant that you've never been to, if you've never been in the actual space. And there's so much going on, so it's very difficult to think of where to begin. But as you've just heard, recently, with contemporary artists, I've been acting almost like an accompanist in music because I provide fragments, scatterings of words, poetry, whatever you use, however you describe it. But it depends on the artist and depends on the space. There are those who, I think, have specific demarcations and to have this visualization of what they want. There are people who ask me to give a balcony level view, people who ask me to write in this very clear-cut path or route. But when I was talking to Ohmaki-san, Ohmaki-san seemed to really open up everything. And there was this gigantic pasture or field, whereas I was told just to do what I wanted to do. It could be whatever I wanted to do, but I felt that he was asking me to put whatever I experienced in that field that he'd laid open for me in words. So whether I'm talking about France or whether I'm talking about Europe, I think that the direction or the general shift that you can see in Europe also is that catalogues are headed in a different direction from what they were like in the past. There is this underlying desire which is occurring simultaneously in different parts of the world. But this is the first time that I was given such free rein to do anything, even though I haven't actually experienced the work. But in fact, I had seen the work. And I had actually been working with him in the past.
What you're seeing now echoes in affinity. 2016 in Aichi Triennale, Omaki-san has contributed some work, and I was also participating. And this is exactly, well, could you please describe what is this step on? Step? Yes, I have collected all these patterns around the world, connecting one region to another. I made a map of the culture, and then being involved in this process, I thought that this will continue or be connected to the future. So a moment, an instance connected to eternity and infinity, and then the space and experience in which we can perceive that, it's something I wanted to offer in this series of work. Originally, I was starting all this from my own experience. My family was involved in the fabric business. Uh, there was decline in their business, and this industry itself, in the area of Gifu, there was decline in this industry. I was losing the place where I was born. I was losing the even address of where I was born. Where can I belong to? So where can I find the world to which I can belong to, and how can we maintain the memory of my being? And I have looked at the whole process of being destroyed, this area, from the building.
And it's that thinking about what is going to. And I was thinking about what innovation, what attempt of regeneration I can bring to this process. That's what I think about. And it happens around the world. Cultures melt together, they come together, everything is brought together. And I was thinking about any possibility that would allow us to record all of this. And ultimately, it's not about seeing it, it's about stepping on this. By walking on this, you create your own time, and that's how this work is completed. When you step on this, the pictures are, I don't know how to describe it. You're destroying it, you're deleting the pictures, otherwise, you can't enter the space. So, in the beginning, you step in tiptoe. At the same time, the space gobbles you up. And it's a beautiful space. But you're also enveloped by this beautiful space. At the same time, when you take steps, you are erasing these beautiful images. So it's a very beautiful work. At the same time, I realized that this was done by Ohmaki-san. That's what I became aware of. And depending on the person, the relationship they hope one will establish with them is different. So you aim to breathe in synchro, but then I thought perhaps that jumping into the work like this particular piece was possible, I felt that this person trusted me. And if you look at the catalogue, the work and the words are not put on separate pages. The text is a part of the work. And when I was asked to work on this, from the very beginning, I was asked to be aware that the intent was to have my words as a part of the artworks. Because, I mean, it's the most important, most precious thing. And I was going to be allowed to write over this, to step over this precious work. And I was offered that opportunity. It's frightening. It's also this tremendous sense of trust that I could feel from Ohmaki-san. And it wasn't just that work, it was also the work which is being presented at this exhibition at Auditorium. I kept on reminding myself of those pieces. And I think it was 3 days that we spent, that I spent on working just on this particular project. And from morning till night, I kept on blinking and thought about this every single moment that I could. It's a beautiful piece. At the same time, it is terrifying in a way. That's the only way to describe it. And when I was just tracing that image and the after image in my mind, I thought, it's not just people who are alive, it's also people who are dead, who are appearing like shadows.
When somebody dies, this some person does not disappear totally. Well, he will or she will remain somewhere, and we are again inspiring these people's being into our lung. So when I remember a work of you, that was exactly the really honest image which was created in my mind. And yesterday, or rather the day before yesterday, this catalogue of yours, this exhibition, I was looking at it, and then I was reading an interview by Miss Nagaya, and then suddenly this idea of the collaboration came up, and what is expected. And Ohmaki-san said that by hearing the words of the Sekiguchi-san, would like to feel something like my wound being rubbed with something on it. And well, that made me feel that, okay, what was done was right. Yeah, exactly as you said, Sekiguchi-san. So when I received your poetry, and yes, and Sekiguchi-san told me that I can chop them into pieces. And I wondered what it meant. And when all these are fragmented, chopped into pieces, then I thought that it all connect to each other. And yeah, light, the illumination, that is showing us the direction to go. This word constellation, constellation of the stars, for example, however, in which all of the pieces are connected, and not by reading all of it, but rather the viewers seeing these words here and there, and then we can connect these words to the words we have in ourselves, and then we can create another different poetry, and this process never ends. Normally, when we read a text, novel or whatever, we are reading the person who wrote it. However, in this case, in the space, it is in a way redigestion, and then that will create into something new, something different, and all this happening in the gastrointestinal tract. So these words are mixed again, and then the movement forms will be created, and these moving forms, that's not what is seen. It can be interpersonal, it can be internal, it can be something to connect inside to outside, and also from the past to the future. So this story of making the floor black, there is another story.
The floor is about the shadows and the shades of the layers of history, which is like the radioactive substances which fill this black rain. And then history, as shadows, move towards us, and again, that impossibility of recovering from the 2011 earthquake, where the shadow of the earthquake and the experiences of the 11th of March continue to be very immediate and very real. There's so much that we have forgotten or deleted from our memories, but all those things connect to each other. And I also feel very much isolated. But in that experience, and those experiences, whatever happens, we keep on having these flashbacks, and we keep on revisiting that particular point again and again, which is a danger that is always there. So this exhibition, it's about that eternal repetition, the eternal struggle with the issues that arise because of human beings and nature, where we have the issues relating to being a living organism, being placed in the context of the cosmos. I wanted to think about all those things, and what links everything together would be those works based on cloth. Absolutely. And the subtitle, Shinku no Yuragi, is about the shimmering in the void, or shimmering in the vacuum. Because yuragi, the Japanese word, is about something where you're no longer certain of certainties, which we have experienced. But in literature and in the fine arts, you have both the direct and the indirect experiences of everything which continues to flow like an underground river, which you might not be able to see, but continues to be there. And I think that perhaps there's been this clear-cut parting of ways. We have the subterranean streams, and Ohmaki-san spoke earlier about deciding to have me work with him. But I'm not trying to say that he's a very generous artist because he opened up this space for me. It's not just simple. it's really that there's this shimmering of the boundaries. It continues to disappear and then become visible. That's the nature of the space. Absolutely, because what is right is not something that is the result of a bias. I think that being in the right position means that you actually allow yourself to be in a place where you can actually see how everything can continue to shift boundaries, where you have that constant shimmering, where everything is impermanent. That instability of perspective, where usually you would tend to think of how you can connect everything with gravity. How can you decide to connect everything in the way of not showing something, which is an important part of art or sculpture? How to resist that is also a very important point. And for something to move, you need to upset its balance. As a former sculpture student, there's the issue of why you had the statues taking one step forward in ancient times and how the balance of gravity was shifted and how it was made unstable. And the instability of the statue's body meant that the next body was then formed, which then connected with the next motion or the next action. So, unless the balance is shifted or upset, you do not have motion. Which means that I'm not talking about creating a work which is going to be stable. By receiving or accepting things were constantly changing, then I'm accepting that possibility. And I earlier mentioned that process of pulling things apart and then putting it in. I'm also talking about putting in things in which are not immediately visible. By having light shift, reflections will change. And because we have black laid down, when you experience the work, you can't actually see it with your physical eyes, but the floor undulates. And while the plane of the gallery space itself might be straight, by creating that element of everything being impermanent, then the wall is no longer a solid wall. It becomes something which is soft and shapeable. It's almost like that pull of gravity that you can feel when you're riding on a train. Your body is then pulled in this tune, this way and that, depending on the direction of the train and speed. And sometimes you had that feeling of something pulling at your knees. Sometimes you feel that your body is being pulled upwards. That being shifted or pulled around or pushed around or pulled around by gravity is something that I've intentionally planned to happen in space. And Sekiguchi-san's poetry does that to your mind. And that is the point where I think things are shaken up for you as a living body or a living organism. I call it poetry, but I don't actually think of it as poetry. I think it's really a matter of trying to share in the words. And I was told that could do whatever I wanted to do. And there are times when it's good to decide on the final form in a very solid way. But in this space, where it's given so much freedom, I felt it wasn't appropriate. So whether it was a line or two lines, I was thinking about providing a herd of words, like a herd of sheep, who are going to be set loose in that field.
So the display on the floor, well, I had no idea about it. And I just knew that there will be something to be exhibited. I was wondering what's going to happen. And then that was what I saw. So it was really exciting, the whole process leading to that. But about this swaying or flickering or whatever you call it, like a feeling as if there is a quake of the floor. And for you, air, air is very important, and that is not to be visualized, but you feel the air. Now, there is a mass of air surrounding us right now, and you make us aware of that. Installation artist, this is how you were introduced. And for me, why not? Why don't we call it a sculpture? And for viewers like me, it is not static, never. And there is always a movement, shake or swaying. Viewers, they are mistaken. They think that it is static. But before you go into the museum and then after you go out of the museum, you are not the same person. Otherwise, what's the point of visiting museum or exhibition? So there is always this movement, and your works make us notice that. Well, maybe I think I have to agree with you, but it all depends on how audience receive my work. And for me, what's important is density, density or the concentration of the mass of air. So when it becomes less and less dense, and then you start to feel lonely, and this is a phenomena we experience. But by keeping it, there is some sort of the gravity or some sort of the weight that you can sense. And we can change it. We can change the density. We can make it higher or less. And the space in which that can happen is that's what we are trying to offer to the viewers. And it depends on how it is illuminated. Do I use odor, smell? I didn't. I don't. And one of the viewers said that there was a very impressive smell, odor, and yes, I try to make use of all the senses of people, but not all of them maybe, so that the what we can sense by eyes, by ears should be there, so that we can sense them. And the liminal air, by restricting the light, by restricting illumination, we see better. What we sense with our skin, this becomes more sensitive. When you feel the pressure by the wave of pressure, well, I used to practice karate, and then same thing happened with the rugby. So when you're fighting against your opponent, and then there is time you aggress, there is time you have to defend, and when you go back to the original position, there is a change in the pressure you feel, and the pressure, that is what's surrounding us, and that is what is influencing us, and that's around us, and that is what's happening which can be visualized by looking at these movement of the tissue. So our sensitivity of the skin feeling the light, and not just the pressure, weight, and this is what we can sense when we are working with our works. So there is no answer to this. That's why it's interesting. So it's not exactly the conceptual art that I am trying to explain. What I'm trying to say is that how pressure is generated, how transformation can happen, and how the mixture may take place, and the images of all of these phenomena. Well, this is not the absolute amount of the pressure, but this is the amount of pressure which we psychologically sense, and that can be sensed physically. And that is what we are working when we are working with the visual arts. And that's important for us. When it comes to the scent, odor, what I thought is that there is a novelist who wrote a novel by staying overnight in Louisville one night, or maybe he was up, not sleeping. He was writing, and this person was a friend of mine. And I asked him, "How did you smell? What did you smell during the night in the Louvre? During the night?" And he said, "Yeah, the scent, the smell of Louvre during the day, it is contaminated by the smell of the visitors. But during the night, it's different because it is a smell of the Louvre, and that is very close to the water because of the Seine, the river, just by the Louvre."
And the building and how this building itself was, in a sense, aware. When we visitors go to museums, we are simply accepting and passive. We go in order to be allowed to see things or experience things. And you have that sensation that you're simply feeling or reading from the impact of the wave, but just by being present or being there, you are interacting and you are, in a sense, becoming intermediaries to one another. I was able to talk to a conservator once, and of course, humidity conservation has various issues and things that I have to be aware of. But apparently, the dust left by visitors, which contains bacteria, is actually quite a headache for the conservators. Just by looking at something in a very passive way, actually is creating dust, and it's like that issue of how the shadows accumulate day after day, and by being alive you are shedding parts of yourself. And I think you're right in saying that there's no right answer. Ohmaki-san makes you think of things, and you become aware of things. Dust and the scatterings of people. I think would like to revisit the concept of kehai, which is translated as presence in the catalogue. Kehai is a point that I wasn't actually talking about. Kehai is that impermanent thing, very difficult to explain. I can't explain it. It's like that interplay that you have with the thrust and the jab and the give and the go. Kehai is about that sensation that you get before you actually feel something. Because being aware that there is no sound, you can hear the fan. I can hear Sekiguchi-san's voice. When I heard you do the poetry reading in Liminal Air, there was a sound. However, today, whether the sound had disappeared or I was no longer able to hear, that subliminal sound, which seemed to be there, which was sort of drifting in the air, which continues to change and transform. I just became aware of that. And when I talked to Sekiguchi-san, well, I wasn't aware of there being no sound. When I spoke, I felt it was different from the day before yesterday. And of course, the fact that you're listening to my voice means that the sound waves are arriving in your ears.
So that's why you can hear me. But the day before yesterday, what happened is that I was reading my work on the wave of sound. I was being carried by the wave of sound, but this time it is different. There was no wave of sound to carry my voice, and I felt it was very uncomfortable. Well, on the contrary, I thought that was interesting. If you have a carrier, yes, you can be carried away. But if there is no carrier, there is no vehicle, can we hear you? Well, the one who generates the voice wanders around because there is no vehicle to carry her voice. But we can receive something different. And the other difference is that yesterday there was this dancer, Suzuki-san, and that made the big difference. So which should come first, the reading, dance, or dance and reading? And it was not decided, so I just decided right before the performance. And then between the first time and the second time, the comfort level was very different. And whether we can hear or not. Well, first you feel that there is the wave of sound. And then by feeling that, by sensing it, we can be carried away, or we can be carried by that vehicle, which is the wave of sound. And then there is also the dance by Suzuki-san. And so there are different layers. So the Suzuki-san said that if there are words, he enjoys dancing more. That's interesting. The absence of what you're talking about, that's what's happening now. When there are many visitors, viewers looking at us, and then that is, in a way, reducing the sound, reducing the reflection, and when we are together with many people, what could be heard cannot be heard because of the presence of the other people. And this is how it should be. It can be, well, a minority, but this kind of sociological condition can happen. What's happening in our society, in the world now, the sound which you rely on is different from person to person. And this poem, which Sekiguchi-san was generating and displaying, and reading, and then in our life there are maybe, for example, earthquake or whatever, and then, well, we are working, working, but all at once because of earthquake, you said your employer says you don't have to come to work tomorrow. You are not needed, but sometimes you feel you are wary of what we are doing, and then you don't want to go to the company the day after. But this may happen. However, because of this gravity effect, we are connected to each other, and that is maybe very much interesting, important to connect. Uh, so it can be a low-level sound, or it can be carried by the voice of somebody else. But when we lose it all at once, you don't hear anything, the absence of sound, like when there was this pandemic, and then what we generate will be just wondering, losing the vehicle to carry what we are trying to floating. So for the generator, because of the losing this vessel or vehicle, we start to float, and we start to be lost. That's interesting.
You spoke about how people can be cut apart. I'm sorry, how long is it? Much. We've already had 1 hour. Perhaps we should just go into some closing comments. If you could just show this. I had so much that we prepared. I'm sorry, we're just having this marvelous talk between ourselves. Could we just show the video to talk about the connections? I'd like to share this video sample with you. It's from the Christian Boltanski exhibition, who's an artist who also had a solo show here. And he was a great mentor for me. When he passed away, he was a person who really spoke about connections and linking together. But I thought it was important to think about how I could link to other people and to pass everything on. Can we have the sound? This, in effect, is a memorial piece to Boltanski. And of course, you can never get the sound when you need it.
Qu'est-ce qu'une vie? C'est ces deux dates et ce petit tiret, c'est ce qu'on retrouve dans les dictionnaires, dans les cimetières, et ça se résume à cette petite barre. J'ai toujours essayé de lutter contre l'oubli, la disparition.
Et si l'oubli n'était pas à l'opposé de la disparition?
D'abord, j'ai écrit le texte donc sur le thème du continuum dans le sens large, c'est-à-dire non seulement le continuum musical, mais aussi le continuum linguistique, à partir de quel moment une langue devient une autre, et le continuum gustatif, et le dernier continuum, exclu le continuum entre notre monde et l'au-delà existe-t-il.
There's a French word, continuum.
Pourrait-on goûter la petite barre?
Continuum as in
Quel goût peut-elle avoir?
the continuum of how Latin morphs into French, how the flavor of something which you put into your mouth disappears, of how you have that link between death and life. And I was collaborating with a composer about linking the sound, taste, words, and the world. And there's so much that I talked about with Boltanski. There's just one question that I couldn't ask him. He also, being human, was afraid of death. And he said that now I know that there's going to be an exhibition in 2025, which makes me feel that I'm not going to die before that. And of course, his memory of the Shoah, the Holocaust, meant that human beings can never be released from forgetting, from destruction. But I feel that something vanishing does not necessarily mean something being forgotten, something vanishing. Somebody might pass away, but you remember that he was there. And if a friend dies, until that person, you're told that person dies, he's still alive in your mind.
Is that something physical? Is that something which we perceive? Well, what I mean is that if we can forget the death of a person, then this person will never disappear. And so this is where we use the voice of the Voltansky. And here's the archive. I cannot let you hear the sound because it's very unfortunate. Because I wanted to let the audience hear his voice, and this is archive of the interview which I was listening, and this is the work I put together with that idea. After the March 11 earthquake of East Japan, we are thrown away, but we can let it continue to exist, at least in our work. We can hear it? Not really. He was talking. What was he saying? Voltansky was saying that one life, for example, 1943 to 2002, so during the time you're alive, well, starting from 1943, and then after you're dead, between these two dates, a line is drawn, and that means that you're dead. So this line is the life. That's what he's saying. So, well, everybody was eating something, birds. So we thought that maybe we can eat this line between two dates. So here, two dates, and the line between the two dates. And if we eliminate this line, then we can make the person exist after the this date in this world. And this is the idea of keeping the connection. That is the recent work. Thank you. Interesting thing is to let the object float. That's interesting. This is something I started at the time of the pandemic, and that is the work I had to do with language. Language is alive, living creature, language. So the relay between two psyches, that is not finishing, that is not the ending now. It will continue into the future. And this connection, we will be aware of that connection one day, by all means. So if there is this installation with which we can capture what is floating, if somebody can do that, and then again, you can let it go. And that's what he tried to do. So if something is floating, that is right. That is how it should be. And the language itself or our mind itself, to know that we exist, there is this word relation. This word relation means that we should remember eternal life, no death. Arakawa Shusaku is talking about that no children who do not die, and that is the idea of how to connect the one mind to another, and this is something we can do, and not the non-human animals. So if we put the language into documents, then the it stops floating.
Because it fixes things. I think that issue of the oral tradition as phenomenon and also as a tradition is fascinating, and as part of my research, I realized that you have similar oral memories all over the world about snakes. You have comparable stories. They're all very similar. And you have all these antennae which link together the existence of living beings, and everything that floats free is liberated, and that life force connects with everything around the world. It's like iPhones, which can capture all these communications. Does that connect with how you create installations? What I thought about was, well, Bodansky was working on installations towards the end of his life, which all disappear once the exhibition is taken down. It doesn't remain as an objet, but he said he was creating legend. He was creating something people are going to continue to talk about long after they've disappeared. And I was wondering if perhaps installations which are dismantled and which are going to become and which are going to be taken away. I mean, Echo's Infinity is one typical example. The monument is the complete opposite of that. An installation is always going to be something where you have the presence of the audience who are immersed in that work, and where it isn't fixed in shape. At the same time, it's like a legend or a myth which is passed down from person to person. I think it's just something which came to mind when I heard you talking, because it's not permanent. It's ephemeral, an installation. It's about the locale. It's about the site. It's about the memory. It's about history. It's about how it connects with the historical context. And there's history and there's history. But the white cube is very much a dominant presence in that it is ahistorical. It divorces you from history. But there's so much which is intriguing when I listen to you. And thinking about what you've said, by having this conversation for the first time, I think that I finally came to understand that installation is, in a sense, the handing down of legend and of stories, the new material, the new way of showing, how you have that possibility of things connecting together as a new way of showing things, but whether it's going to be possible to have a world where the human beings no longer have a physical presence, I'm not quite sure about that. But now that we have AI, we're talking about food shortages, but in that context, poetry becomes truly alive perhaps when it's set free in front of people like this audience. What are your thoughts about physical presence? And, well, even if you give words to poetry, it doesn't really become fixed. Every time I do a reading, then poetry is created anew. During the pandemic, there was a cellar master who was working in Champagne, and I had the opportunity to have very long talks with him to take down his oral history. And he has actually drunk champagne which was bottled in 1911. I asked him what it was like, and he said, it tasted good, and there were bubbles, which meant that he was drinking down the air which had been bubbled in 1911, which I thought was really important. But the fact that he had drunk it, he said, was going to be forgotten. But I said, if I write this, then it's going to be retained in memory. And those bubbles, which are so ephemeral, which are going to disappear, might be comparable to how short our lives are. But by leaving the text, it's possible that 100 years in the future, somebody might pick up this piece of writing and say, so there's somebody who drank the air of a century ago. So it's like bottling something up in a bottle, and every time somebody opens up that bottle, then you can smell what it is. So don't worry, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I have a totally different way of sensing what you said. In the Kumamoto Contemporary Art Museum, there was an exhibition together with some works from France by Monet, and then the fluorescent light in that exhibition room, we were suggested that we can open the box containing the works of Monet. And I said, of course, I would like to see them. So we opened the box. Well, what's so interesting is that the air in France is different from air in Japan. Air in Japan, more humid, more wet. And so the vapor there. And the moment we open the box, this interface between two different air may be something we can see. I felt that I could see that in terms of change of the color. I thought maybe it was a illusion, but maybe it wasn't. So maybe there was something to do with the like these bubbles of the champagne. I said that there is this work of mine with these light bubbles coming down, and yes, just keep going. And I put one called Simple at the outset. In Hirosaki, its history, well, rather, I did the research not just in Hirosaki, but in all over Aomori Prefecture. And this is the one, this small bubble or ball of light coming down slowly. Like, you sense this temporal feature. The recycle company of Aomori collecting a lot of the garbage, and then they burn the garbage in the gas furnace. And this company agreed to work with me in this research. And the material, which is no more degradable, often used for the manufacturing of concrete material and things like that, but not all of it is consumed that way. So
I went to the archaeological site at Sanjimayama, which is a Jomon era archaeological site, and there's all of these relics from prehistory, which had formed layers. And as we all live, and as our individual experiences overlay one another as layers, as history, as memories, from the Jomon era onwards, it all becomes compressed, almost like this glass-like stratum. So our memories and the proof of our existence become evident. And so you have that large rich memory and those tiny elements of memory linking together. And this is very much symbolized, I think, by this. So it's like that scent that disappears. It's like that bubble which is born and then which fades away. But this bubble becomes smoke, and it then remains floating for an instant and disappears. So our life is not just evident in this moment, it's part of this longer, larger flow of time. It's really important that we continue to pass on our memories, to communicate, and also to continue to ensure that people can receive that. And the starting point for me was I became too muscular because I've been working too much, and my blood flow became irregular, so my hands weren't functioning properly. And I'm a person, I have a family, I have a child, and it really made me think about how I could connect as an artist, as a human. And in Hirosaki, I would shake hands with people to help my blood flow to my fingertips and connect with other people.
So this is the original work which came to be related to what I'm displaying in this exhibition. And yes, I did the research one after another. And to be alive doesn't mean to be existing forever, but this is to be rescued by this word floating. The floating, the spirit or the spirit of language, and how it is to be connecting what we are seeing now to what was shown in Hirosaki years ago. And then during my work, during the past 30 years, this can be one conclusion. That I have arrived at, and then make available for you.
It's a very important word that I was planning to talk about. The Japanese subtitle, Shinku no Yuragi, is a moment of the Big Bang, when universe was born. It's this shimmering which occurs in a vacuum. And how vacuums are born is that you have a space. You have a presence in terms of an object with mass, which is lost, which leaves a vacuum behind, which sucks in something which creates that shimmering or that undulation. It links with the earthquake, where you make something which exists disappear and create new stones. It's a very small thing for the universe, perhaps, but for us, it is massive importance. But unless that trigger happens, you're never going to become aware. And what we forget on an everyday basis probably existed, but then we become aware of something, and you are then drawn into it. So you start from thinking, oh, how lovely, and then you're pulled in a different direction. What I wanted to really cherish was that transition in your values. Also, when you do something that you had before, then you are given the time and the space, all those internal and external phenomena which occur. And I wanted to sum that all up in the subtitle. And then interface. Interface accepts everything. It's like a sponge. Because everything can be absorbed by a sponge. Everything is absorbed, it's porous, and with a sudden shift, everything can be pushed out. So that surface, the matter which exists, and then you have that complete contradiction in the phrases and in the concepts, which create this in Hirosaki, at the very end, there's work based on flowers, but for me, I don't really intend to set colors apart. It's just that the diversity of the world is being reflected by colors, like a mandala. But in this work, there are all the colors of the things which are gathered together from that locality.
So black and white, this is extremes of the color spectrum, both black and white. So the extremes of darkness, well, metachromatic, that's black, and that's the color. And if it is the light, the optically it becomes white. So two dimensions now put together as two layers, one on the other. So black and white. After the earthquake of east of Japan. Yes, I have work with more work with black and white. 16 years in 2016. So this is the regeneration of a human life. We had a re-encounter, but before that, I could not write anything about the color. What is color? Color. That is something which I try to restrict myself when I think about the life. And in Hirosaki, towards the end, the very colorful world of life, we can step into that to find a new way. That is why I made this work called Trail. And this is one trail. That is something I had inspiration from the snow landscape of Aomori, because each year they had to work with the scraping of the snow and people walking on the snow, and then the trails or the roads being made in the forest. Also, the animals can help. And then, so what it is to live alive, there was no road, no trail, and from that moment we can draw a line and path. We can create a path to our life. That's what people can work together to make that path. That process is something I wanted to show in this work. My recent work in A4 museum, it's the other way around. It's all mirrors. And you have to walk on glass where, and you cannot see surroundings, but this path of light, which is tortuous or interrupted, not straight, but going towards all over rhizome, like the roots of plants are spreading into different directions, and that is the path. And if you make a mistake, it may break because it's made of glass. So
I also think it's different because in the pandemic, everything was and I was really thinking about how everything was going to be cancelled, and so everything that I had in mind, or the soap bubbles project, everything was impossible in that sense. And how I could actually come to terms with that, how I could think about that, everything, when I was talking about that earlier, but the fact that I'm alive, and being aware of the fact I was alive, were perhaps different things. Perhaps COVID-19, the virus, is more alive. Perhaps language is more alive than we are. And perhaps we are simply a vehicle for those things. or those presence, or those existences. Like, to see the research, I want to do research-based work, which was also based on language. So I was planning to show this in 2021, but that exhibition was also cancelled because of COVID. I couldn't do anything. So I finally got this chance in Hirosaki. But I thought Hirosaki wasn't the right opportunity for that. I also thought I wanted to show this as soon as possible. But the fact that language is alive, is a living organism, and the research that I was doing, which happened to overlap with my research findings, which related to Aboriginal languages. And I wanted to do work which is based on language. And you see, the flowers that I have in my work all relates to the meaning of being alive. And that's the reason why things are present and things are absent. It's all about asking why I am here, why we are here. So in that sense, the fundamentals haven't really changed. But by doing my research, the perspective from which I see myself or look at myself has changed, that I think that's very important. And I think you need to be able to take the grander perspective as well as a smaller perspective. And I think that's very important. So at Hirosaki, the Kodama piece looked at the sound of the woodpecker, which was transformed to the Morse code. And in Hirosaki, there were quotes from the famous novelist Dazai and the playwright and poet Terayama, who are closely connected with Aomori. And it's almost like music. And after that, there's a work based on Antonio Carlos Cuarim. After experiencing a major disaster, picked up stones in a forest and thought about nature and himself. And he's happened to write poetry about the southern hemisphere, so March is actually more like summer in different seasons for us. But the work that I'm sharing with you is really the starting point. The language spreads out into the universe, and you get that sound of the clanging bell at the very end, which is not just words, it's the fact that sound exists means that life is there, though it's all footage of the forest. And that spreads out. And that's what I shared with you. Thank you so much for joining us.